Camels are pretty well known for their humps, but it's not necessarily for the reason you might think. People have long thought that these humps store water, and that's certainly true, but only sort of. Camels can go without water for days, if not weeks. They can even survive at 25% dehydration, which is enough to kill most other mammals. But this doesn't mean that they actually store water inside their bodies. Instead, it's all about the fat. Hi, it's me, and this is my channel. Camels have two humps, one for each shoulder, that grow out of modified neck vertebrae. They look like giant water balloons, but they're actually more like basketballs filled with butter. Each hump can hold around 36 pounds or 16 kilograms of fat, which can be metabolized when the camel needs energy. Humped animals like camels and llamas store fat here instead of in their livers, because it keeps their center of gravity low. And while humans store fat around their midsection too, having it along their spines helps them keep their balance and prevents them from toppling over. The fat in their humps also acts as an insulator, helping maintain a constant body temperature so that the rest of the organs can keep functioning properly. And in the desert where camels live, this is super important because their body shape and fur also help with thermoregulation. They have a relatively large surface area to volume ratio, giving them lots of room for air to circulate and cool them down. Plus, they've got lots of fur. In fact, a camel has between 12 and 14 million hairs. And while that sounds like a lot, they actually need all of them to stay cool. See, their fur helps reflect sunlight and protect them from sunburn, but they need to keep their skin moist to maximize the cooling effect. So they sweat and then use their fur to spread it around, kind of like a furry water park. The reason that people thought that camels stored water in their humps, though, is because they can go such a long time without drinking. And this is still not really true. See, a camel's hump isn't like a sponge that holds onto water. And there isn't any special camel magic behind how they survive without water. It's just regular old biological stuff. One way that they conserve water is by getting most of it back after peeing. Like other mammals, camels excrete nitrogenous waste in the form of urea, dissolved in water. And this obviously causes them to lose water, but they're able to reabsorb some of it by excreting very concentrated urine. Because of this, their kidneys funnel the pee back into their bloodstream, where it gets sent to either the lungs or the skin to be expelled from the body. If they're in a dry environment, the kidneys will send most of the extra water to the lungs to be exhaled, which means that their breath will literally look like steam. This process is called obligatory water reabsorption, and it allows them to reclaim around 75% of the water that they would normally lose when urinating. And while camels are peeing, they can also get rid of excess salt through another process called facultative water reabsorption. Most of the sodium in their blood comes from the salt that is left over after they reabsorb all the water they can. This leaves them with very salty pee. And by controlling how much sodium gets reabsorbed, camels can control how much water gets flushed out of their bodies. When they need to conserve water, they reabsorb more sodium, which leaves them with more concentrated urine. And this means that they won't lose as much water. But it's not just their kidneys that are good at conserving water. All of the water that camels don't reabsorb ends up in their digestive system, which is full of adaptations that prevent water loss. The first stop is the stomach, which has 4 compartments. And since food can sit in the first 3 for up to 10 hours, a lot of water can get absorbed before it reaches the intestines. The first compartment is basically a bucket where swallowed particles of dirt and ingested microbes hang out. The second is where food gets mixed with enzymes and acids. And the third is where the real digestion happens with the help of symbiotic microbes. Then the partially digested food goes into the 4th compartment, which is a more typical stomach that mixes things up and passes them along. And while this process is happening, water gets absorbed into the blood through the lining of the stomach and intestines. Normally, the blood carries the water around the body until it reaches the kidneys and gets turned into urine. But when a camel hasn't drunk any water for a while, its body senses that there isn't enough of it around. So it triggers something called the antidiuretic hormone cascade. This hormone tells the kidneys to reabsorb more water, meaning that there's less water available for the blood to carry to the rest of the body. So instead, some of it starts getting reabsorbed directly into the cells lining the digestive tract, leaving the blood with even less water. But this isn't a problem because those cells then start extracting even more water out of the food. The cells essentially act like sponges, soaking up water and releasing the now watery digestive juices directly into the bloodstream, making a camel's blood around 96% efficient at grabbing all the water it can from the food. Once it's in the bloodstream, the water spreads throughout the body, including the brain. And this is key, because the brain is what tells the rest of the body that there is enough water to go around. But it's not just the brain telling the body that it's hydrated. When a camel hasn't drunk water in a while, its body releases a hormone called angiotensin II. This hormone constricts blood vessels, which makes blood pressure go up. And that means that the heart doesn't have to work as hard to pump blood around the body. So overall, the body loses less water. Angiotensin II also stimulates the release of aldosterone, which is another hormone that helps regulate salt and water balance. Aldosterone targets the kidneys, telling them to reabsorb more sodium, which means they'll also reabsorb more water. The water that does end up in the urine gets concentrated in the kidneys to make sure that as little water as possible leaves the body. After going through all of these processes, a camel can reuse almost all of the water it expends, which is why they can go for so long without drinking. But they aren't actually storing water in their humps. It's just a myth. But it's not entirely untrue, because when they do drink water, camels can store it in their bodies and deliver it to their bloodstreams more slowly than other mammals. And this means that they can go longer between drinks. For example, if a camel drank 30 gallons or 100 liters of water, it could take up to 6 hours for all of it to get into its bloodstream. This slow and steady delivery prevents the kidneys from overloading and helps ensure that the entire body has enough water. So while it's true that camels store water in their humps, it's not because they're filling them up like a water balloon. Instead, their humps are full of fat that can keep them alive for long periods without food or water, and that's pretty cool. And now we know more about how they do it. Thanks for watching.